All right, disability parents and anyone watching, you have to tell me if you can relate to this. I'm going to share our experience we just had. So, Kevin was getting his assessment for this year, annual assessment for the Medicaid waiver program he's on. Now, keep in mind, in July, a new company got the contract to manage this waiver that he's on. And it's been an absolute mess. Like, typically, the case managers are calling and checking in once a month. And I'll be honest, like, if they were to call me and I didn't respond to them, Kevin would get disenrolled. I had not heard from anybody for close to 4 months. Okay. And so it's really ironic that I finally hear from someone and then there's this absolute push to quickly get this assessment done, right? Because they needed to have this assessment sent in to Medicaid on time. And so as a parent, I'm expected to bend over backwards to accommodate and make, in this really, quick, short span of time, I'm supposed to make this work, right? For them to come to my home to do this assessment. And basically I was like, well, here's the day I could do it, which just happens to be Veterans Day. I didn't even really think of that it's a federal holiday, right? And these are technically workers that probably have the day off. But I said, this is the only day I could do to meet to do this assessment. So anyways, this lady comes to do the assessment and there's a part of the assessment that determines the person's nursing hours, how many hours they can get. And I have always, for many, many years, probably for the last 10 years, I have done this assessment, this annual assessment for Courtney, who, as you guys know, most of you know, has passed away. And then for Kevin, I have done it in the presence of a physician. In the last 2 years, I kind of let up a little, but I always do all of these assessments in person and with the case manager in person, because the history of this is a little over 10 years ago, the system became very corrupt and they were booting kids off of this waiver left and right. I could name probably 5 friends of mine that have kids that got wrongfully taken off this waiver and put on a different waiver under the County Board of Developmental Disabilities. And they tried to take my daughter off of this waiver about 10 years ago, someone who was so medically fragile. It was ridiculous. And I knew at that time I would never do these assessments again over the phone or just leave them up to the case manager to do without me being present. And so again, we would do it with a physician at the physician's office. And anyways, and I wanted to participate in every part of it. And so this private duty nursing acuity scale is literally where they go through system by system, care by care, and it's a point system to determine how much nursing this child or this person is eligible for. And so today, this lady's in my home and we're getting toward the end. And I said, well, I would really like to do that nursing acuity scale together. And she refused. She said, nothing's going to change. His hours are not going to change. And my question very reasonably was, well, how do you know it's not going to change? How can you say that if you're not going to do that? Like, you can't say that. You don't know him. You didn't do his assessment last year. Are you telling me you're going to take his assessment from last year and copy the exact same thing? Well, no, I'm not going to do that. Okay, then how can you say it's not going to change? And she said, well, this is a tool I use to be able to authorize his hours. And I said, well, this tool protects me and protects him so that I know how many hours he's eligible for. I said, what if you do this tool? Because right now he's eligible for 112 hours a week of nursing, the maximum amount, because Kevin has a lot of medical needs. And I said, what if you do it without me? And because you don't know him, this is your first time meeting him. And what if you get 84 hours a week of nursing and not those 112 hours? And this woman fought me on this. I mean, to the point where I was like, well, I can't sign this assessment and say that I participated fully and say that I agree with this if you're not allowing me to be present. And then she brought up the fact that it's Veterans Day and she drove an hour to be here and blah, 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 all these different things, right? And I wasn't giving in. I wasn't giving in. It didn't make sense to me because, again, I've done this tool every year with every other case manager. And I know it takes like it literally took us 2 minutes when she finally huffed and puffed enough and gave in because she could tell I was not giving in. And I said, I'll do it over the phone with you tomorrow. I don't care. I'll do it. I'll do a Zoom call with you. I'll scan this paper back to you tomorrow that says I agree to this. And then she tried to back me into a corner basically and say, well, if you don't sign this, he's going to lose his eligibility. And I said, no, he's not. It's just that I'm not comfortable signing it today without doing this with you. And here's what I'll never understand. So this is the gist of it. I know she was frustrated to be here on Veterans Day, this federal holiday. And I'm sorry that you gave me literally a 4-day notice that you needed to do this assessment. And this was the only day I literally had nothing on my calendar and could be here and do this with you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that that's how it landed, right? I guess technically she could have said no. No one forced her to come here, but that's not really my problem, to be honest with you, right? But what I think I'll never understand is, like, I basically said to her, what does it hurt to do this? Like, I know this takes 2 minutes to do. So what does this hurt? And again, other than the reasons that you want to leave my house and you don't want to be here and do this on your day off, I get it. Okay, that's fine. But like, other than that, what does it hurt to have the person who knows him best, the person who could give you the most accurate assessment, participate in that? And the attitude, the nastiness, the lack of professionalism, and now tomorrow I have to email her supervisor and go, yeah, that's not going to work. This relationship isn't going to work because I'm a caregiver. I've been caregiving for, sorry, 75. I've been caregiving for 25 years. That is not what I need. That is not what comes into my home. That is not the type of personality I'm going to deal with. I'll tell you that right now. When you've been caregiving for 25 years, for the last 13, 2 kids with special needs, medically complex, nursing facility level of care, that is not what we need. We need support. And why would you ever resist collaboration? That is what I was trying to get at. Why would you ever resist collaboration from a parent, a caregiver, a guardian, somebody who cares, somebody who just says, I want my child accurately assessed? And no, you can't guarantee me that that assessment is going to be the same because you just met him 30 minutes ago. You don't know him from head to toe. You didn't ask me every single one of those questions. That is what I will never understand. And you see it in every area of disability. You see it in school settings when a family hires an attorney or has an advocate present. You're automatically the witchy mom or the, jerky dad who brings help, right? No, maybe that just means that the parent cares. Maybe that's what it means. Maybe they're not being adversarial. Maybe they just need support. Or like I said to the lady today, I said, sorry, I have a little PTSD from 10 years ago when this program tried to save my daughter, who was 100% TPN dependent with a central line, lived in intestinal failure, lived on IV nutrition, wasn't to skill level of care, even though ironically, an LPN can't even administer TPN, only a registered nurse, but she wasn't a skilled level of care. Do you know how hard I had to fight and how I had to go to state hearings to determine and fight for my daughter to be accurately assessed? So yeah, I do have a little PTSD. Yeah, I do want to do that assessment with you. Yeah, I do want to see you actually put those numbers in, not because I think you're a bad person, but the reality is you do not know my kid. You have walked into my home for 20 minutes. You wouldn't even know how to fill that out accurately. Where is the humility? Where is the collaboration? Where is just the honor and dignity for caregivers? That's what I want to know. Why is that adversarial? Why was this lady huffing and puffing and almost basically storming out of my house? Literally, I'm not joking. She was shaking. She was so mad. And I don't get mad. Like I don't. I just kept kindly saying, like, I don't think you can guarantee me that that's going to be the same. You can't guarantee it. Because if you give him the wrong points for a certain part of his body or a certain part of his care, no, that's going to affect him. That's absolutely going. It's going to affect the support I get for him for the rest of the year. And she kept saying, well, you can appeal it. And I told her, I said, well, I request copies of his assessments. I request all of his records. Like, I want to have that. That's my leverage. That's my protection as someone who relies on nursing and relies on this support. And so I guess the last thing I'll say is when you hear all this going on in our country about Medicaid, the people who need this, the people who qualify for these types of things, these services, are most vulnerable in this country. Please do not for a minute think that this is easy or that this is just handed to us. Nothing can be further from the truth. Kevin would be considered one of the most vulnerable people in our country. And these are the type of things we are dealing with as parents, as caregivers, as authorized representatives, as legal guardians. These are the attitudes. These are the things we're dealing with. And it's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's not okay. And I'll be honest with you, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. And it shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be this hard. And I want you to stop, because if you know me and you're watching this, you may be going, whoo, she is feisty. Yeah, you're right, I am. And you know what I'll tell you? 25 years ago, I wasn't. And this is what the system will do. And I'm not saying it's bad. You have to be an advocate. You have to dig your heels in the ground. You have to just say what needs to be said. And I always do it with dignity. I always do it with respect. I'm not going to coddle you. I'm not going to pat you on the back and tell you I want to be a part of my kid's assessment. I'm going to say confidently, I have a right to be part of my kid's assessment. But what I'm going to say to you is this. What about the parents who can't do this? What about the young mom who has no clue how to do this? Why should her kid get less simply because maybe she hasn't walked through the things I've walked through? Maybe she doesn't have the skill set I have. Maybe she isn't as fearless as I am. Maybe she doesn't have the communication skills I have. Maybe she hasn't gone online and read the Ohio administrative codes to know what her rights are. Why would a kid ever suffer, or a person with a disability ever suffer because maybe their authorized representative or their guardian or their parent or their caregiver doesn't have the same skill set I do? Like, it shouldn't be based on who has the strongest advocate. But that is truly how the system is based on, right? It is. And you can talk to any disability parent and they will tell you that. It is based on how strong of an advocate you have to be. And I'll tell you what, that lady probably walked out of here and thought I'm the biggest witch with the bee. She probably did, even though, again, I treated her with complete dignity and respect, but I didn't back down. And that's the crappy part too, is when you're in the world of advocacy, when you're in the world of caregiving, you have to be okay being misunderstood. You have to be okay not being liked. You have to be okay with people walking away thinking you're the worst person in the world, but you're not. This is who God has entrusted to your care. This is the talent that he has entrusted to you. This is who he's entrusted to you to speak up when they can't speak for themselves. And again, to always do it with dignity and respect. Again, I'm not going to baby you. I'm not going to sit there and poo you and, rub your back and sit there and put myself down to make you feel better. No, I'm going to confidently say what needs to be said. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard. And that's it. That's all I wanted to share.